distinguished fellows. This afternoon, we changed a little bit the structure of our ceremony award days. We invited outstanding personalities to stay here with us, and then we will follow a debate. And what keeps us united are at least three things: excellency in science, progress in science globally, and how, as a European, could really have a different narrative where science could be our target. And for this afternoon, I have the privilege to have two outstanding women, not men. And one is the president of the European Research Scientific Council, Professor Maria Lepten, that I have had the pleasure to meet in my other life when I was trying to fight for the establishment of ERC together with Professor José Gago, and I signed the document, the petition, where the driving force was EMBO, so I know all the work outstanding that Professor Maria Lepten did, and is also a great privilege for us to be our fellow in our academy. The other one is Professor Maria da Graça Carvalho. Is a great friend of mine. I know her from a lot of time. And she has been a fantastic life since Portugal. She was Minister of Science and Technology, now is my wife. But she did a lot of things in favor of science in Portugal. And also she has had the vision how things could change at European level. First, she has been involved in creation of the European Institute of Technology. Was when she was the advisor of Commissioner Barroso, also Portuguese. Also, she changed somehow the strategy in Europe. That is now something which is very consolidated with our Commissioner Carlos Moedas with the scientific advisor mechanism. She is in the origin of this thing, which is very important for us and for our progress. And also, she has been involved somehow in advising the Commissioner Carlos Moedas in creating the European Innovation Council. And so she has something that is a vision for Europe, a vision that how Europe could move and go further. And during the debate, we will have someone that is looking for excellency from the European Innovation Council, which is my friend Federico Matteucci. And during the discussion, we'll hear all this, which is very important because we are here, as I told you this morning, not just to award, to recognize fellows, but to see how we can contribute for the comfort and welfare for all, especially in Europe. So saying so is with great honor and my privilege to give the words to the President of the European Scientific Council, Professor Maria Lepten.
Okay, thank you, Rodrigo, for the introduction. And it's a pleasure to be here with you this afternoon. And of course, I'm very honored to have been made a member of this academy. So I've been asked to speak to you today about the importance of frontier research, or basic research. It's a bit funny because I'm sure I'm preaching to the converted. Most of you have probably dedicated your lives and careers to pursuing frontier research. Certainly that's the case for some of you whom I know and whose work I know. The aim of the European Academy of Sciences is to promote science and technology and their essential roles in fostering social and economic development. So I don't think you need convincing about the importance of frontier research. But the issue is that we rely on the support of others to be able to carry out our work. And it's important that politicians and policymakers and citizens and society as a whole understand the importance of frontier research, not just us. And in fact, there are powerful arguments for supporting frontier research, which I'll get to. Unfortunately, there is no easy magic formula which is guaranteed to persuade politicians and policymakers to support frontier research. So we've got to be patient and make our case over and over and over again. That's part of politics. And it's also important to make the right arguments, but also to engage with the right decision makers at the right time. There's always some politicians or others involved in the policy process that are more interested in making a career than improving the world. And we're seeing a particularly sad example of that right now across the channel. So some of these decision makers are more likely to be attracted to the superficial, the soundbite, quick fix. And for them, it's of less interest to look beyond the short term to see the benefits of investing in frontier research. So instead, we have to engage with those who dedicate their careers to leaving the world a better place, and those who take a long view, those who enter public service to do something and not just to be someone. And thankfully, they exist. I have the pleasure of knowing many of them here in the European government, and in fact, our Vice President Vestager just yesterday stressed the importance of basic research. It was really wonderful to hear that. She's got it. Still, not everybody does, and it remains our duty to speak on behalf of fundamental research. But we do have to recognize that our leaders and decision makers actually have difficult choices to make. The problem for any government is that they face requests from all sides, unlimited. Everybody wants more, and there's a limited pot of money. And of course, politicians have the obligation to think hard about what that money is used for. And of course, sometimes one may get tempted no, let me say something else first. So the difference is that investing in research is very different in investing many other things. It's easy to see for the citizen what they're getting if you invest in building hospitals or roads or increasing the pensions, but it's not so easy to see for them what they get if they're investing in research, especially if it's these sort of ivory tower research projects that some people see some of our work as being. So that means that we are sometimes tempted to propose our research, to phrase our research proposals as if we weren't doing basic research at all. We might be tempted to argue that what we need to do is cure cancer or address climate change or land somebody on Mars or whatever, because it's easier to sell. All these things are, of course, possible, and I understand this approach, but I think it's very dangerous. I don't actually think it's necessary to argue like this for the value of frontier research. And we should be, in fact, very wary of over-promising and sometimes under-delivering. If we keep saying we'll cure cancer by doing this bit of basic research, and then we don't, the public quite rightly gets pissed off. So it can undermine our research. We must be honest. But in fact, what we're getting when we invest in frontier research is an increased understanding of the world, whether it's the physical world, the living world, or the social world, the world of the human mind. So the trouble is that many people find this hard to grasp. What do you mean by an increased understanding? What is the value of that? How does that do us any good? But there are, in fact, compelling reasons why our increasing our understanding of the world is, in fact, not just good for fulfilling our curiosity, but it's a very good investment to make. First, let me go through a bunch of examples. If we build a bridge, people benefit from that. You can cross the river or you can cross the valley, get there faster. The trucks can deliver their stuff faster. So, but only the people in that area will benefit. But a new idea that results from fundamental research can benefit everyone in the world. So Paul Romer, who received the Nobel Prize in 2018 for analyzing the economic consequences of this insight that ideas are different from other investments, realized that the physical and human capital are rival goods, that's what he called them. If a particular machine or an engineer are used in one factory, they can't simultaneously be used in another factory. But ideas are non-rival goods. One person or company using an idea does not preclude others from using it too. So this means that investment in frontier research can really reap huge benefits far beyond any other type of investment. So ideas can be used over and over again, which is great itself, but it goes on. Also recognized by Paul Romer, investing in new knowledge has another tremendous advantage, namely that different types of knowledge can be combined. And Romer called this combinatorial explosion, and which is, in fact, what's driven the huge rise in living standards that we've seen over the last couple of centuries. So, very simply, the more knowledge we acquire, the more useful combinations out of that knowledge we can make. And most importantly, new findings in one area can open up completely unexpected avenues in different areas. So science research, I shouldn't call it only research, we really have to remember that the humanities should also be included on this. Research advances on a broad front and often an unpredictable front, which means that if we put all our resources into priority areas that are defined top-down, that can actually lower our chances of making advances because we don't have all that other stuff that will feed into that area. So even in that area, it might slow down research. And finally, science has another quality that makes it a great investment. So we can perform a whole series of trial and error experiments, and if we discover an improvement, a breakthrough, great. We can retain it and discard the rest. But we do have all the other stuff. And unlike the bridge, the next step we take doesn't have to work, but it may eventually work. It always advances knowledge and can be built on, even if itself is not yet the bridge. But the final thing we have to remember, something that research does, in addition to steadily accumulating knowledge itself, it also trains highly skilled knowledge workers, which our economies all need. So that means that the channels by which frontier research feeds into the economy, or makes an impact, as people like to call it, are really broad and diverse. It's not just about the occasional breakthrough that everybody wants when they call for a high risk, high gain, a term I really hate, research. Basic research increases the general stock of useful knowledge, both the kind that is written down in scientific publications or monographs, and the kind that people carry around in their heads, skills, know-how, experience. It trains skilled graduates and researchers in solving complex problems. It produces new scientific instruments, new algorithms, new methodologies, and it creates international peer networks like here, through which that knowledge is transmitted and rapidly spread throughout the world. So I'm not just saying that. There are numerous studies that have looked into the return on investment of funding frontier research and found that it's very high. In fact, when Mario Monti was asked to lead a high-level expert group into the future EU budget, he identified two areas that had the highest EU added values, and those were research and security. So politicians do know it and do understand it. And it's actually not even new, but economists have been studying for 2 centuries the classical factors of production, and this is agricultural production: land, labor, and capital. But another Nobel Prize winner, Robert Solov, and other economists in the 1960s came to realize that only half of the growth can be explained by these known factors: land, labor, capital. Double the land, double your workers, double your horses, you double your production. But the greater growth actually comes from a new factor of production, namely new technological progress. So replace your horses by tractors, and it goes up more than double. Now, again, this was good to be phrased and stated explicitly in the 60s and 70s. It is now not disputed by anybody. In fact, it's become sort of a mantra. You know, we need technological progress to bring benefits to society. So the question then is, how do we best support technological process? And again, there is a reasonable consensus. It's accepted that technology requires both frontier, curiosity-driven research and applied research. And second, it's actually accepted that governments need to fund frontier research. Because the application of such research cannot be foreseen, is not necessarily immediate, could be long time lag between fundamental discoveries and their exploitation, that means that the private sector does not have the right incentives to fund it. There are interesting modern exceptions to this, but as a whole, the private sector is bound to look for short-term benefit. That's what they're there for. So it's understood that governments have to fund it. Also, few now dispute this form of division of labor. Even the OECD, in its latest innovation strategy report from 2015, states, and I quote, "Public investment in scientific research is widely recognized as public investment in scientific research is widely recognized as an essential feature of effective national innovation systems. Public research plays a key role in innovation by providing new knowledge and pushing the knowledge frontier." So it's OECD, it's not some radical, selfish ivory tower scientists. I don't believe that ivory tower scientists are selfish, but they're sometimes seen as that. I go on with the quote, "Universities and public research institutions often undertake longer-term, higher-risk research and complement the activities of the private sector." So an interesting number. Although the volume of public R&D is less than 30% of the total, public represents less than 30% of the total R&D, but universities and private research institutes perform more than 3/4 of the total basic research. So, next time we're asked to explain the importance of funding frontier research, maybe we could respond and ask, what other type of investment generates the same level of returns? Whatever type of investment compounds in value and does not depreciate? What other type of investment produces value even when it produces negative results? And finally, what other type of investment trains the people we need for the knowledge economy and allows us to access knowledge discovered elsewhere throughout the world? So the ERC is based on this understanding. The ERC supports excellent scientists from anywhere in the world, of any age, from any field of research, as I've said, including social sciences and humanities. No predetermined targets or quota, and provides substantial long-term funding of up to 3.5 million euros per group for up to 5 years. The only conditions are that the researchers must be based in Europe and willing to be adventurous, creative, original, and take risks. So this philosophy rests on the assumption, on the idea, that the researchers themselves know what are the most promising areas that are new and open to explore. So the ERC does not ask its researchers to tell us what societal problem they want to solve or what impact their work will have. We just believe that without understanding, there can be no real solutions to any problems. So we're not saying we don't care if the work that we fund has any impact. We're saying give freedom to researchers, and that's the best way to get most impact. So the ERC publishes its own analysis of all projects it funds, last one under Horizon 2020, and on the website there is a series of fact sheets that show the diversity of the funded research with projects and many emerging areas of science. And we in fact have a unit now that's called Feedback to Policy that informs politicians of the options and of what comes out of this. So even though these are all bottom-up basic research projects, about 34% of the analyzed projects are likely to contribute to health policies, including cancer, brain, human mind research. 1 in 10 projects address problems linked to the digital transition, which the EU cares very much about. Half of them in artificial intelligence, no surprise, this is coming from basic research. And 14% are thought to be relevant to climate policies and green solutions. Nobody told these researchers to go in those directions. It's just that they're interested and they're addressing those problems. So the ERC grantees push the frontiers of knowledge, but the study also shows that this knowledge actively contributes to political priorities. And it refutes the view that you have to tell researchers. We, of course, have many other examples. Nobody told Ugur Shahin in Mainz to develop a cancer vaccine, or the people in Oxford to, COVID vaccine, or the people in Oxford. They switched within, weeks of the pandemic being there to producing that vaccine without being told so, out of their own interest and based on their own knowledge. So, as we see, you don't have to tell researchers what to do because they would otherwise not do anything practical and urgent. Nothing is further from the truth. So my message to all research policymakers is trust researchers and give them the means to pursue their best ideas. That's the best investment in our future. And I just want to remind you of another old report, which means we shouldn't have to rediscover the wheel all the time. Vannevar Bush, in a report 1945 to the President of the United States, called for an expansion of government support for science and the creation of the National Science Foundation, which we now know we have. And he stated then, so this is 70 years ago, scientific progress on a broad front results from the free play of free intellects, working on subjects of their own choice in the manner dictated by their curiosity for exploration of the unknown. Freedom of inquiry must be preserved under any plan for government support for science. The Americans did that. So, the fact is that by understanding the world, we can change the world. So it's clear then that researchers must have the freedom to explore and understand the world as it is. That's why funding can't be short-sighted. To maintain a healthy research system, it is right to invest in long-term curiosity-driven research. Some consider this approach to be idealistic, but I consider it to be pragmatic and necessary in order for science to have its maximum impact for the benefit of society. And while I'm president of the ERC, I will continue to make this argument over and over again for as long as it takes to be heard. And I hope and can count on your help in this endeavor as well. Thank you. Okay, very nice.
Good afternoon to everyone. First of all, I would like to congratulate the European Academy of Science and to thank the kind invitation and a very special word to its president, Professor Rodrigo Martins, and also his kind words about my career. He's a very generous person, someone that I really admire. Actually, it's a role model with his wife, that is now the Minister of Research and Higher Education in Portugal, Elvira Fortunato, and they are both a role model for policymakers, but also researchers. She's a fantastic researcher, like Professor Rodrigo Martins. So I'm very honored that I'm a very good friend of both of you. So it's a true pleasure to be here, also to have the opportunity to meet the president of ERC that we have been followed very closely, but we have not had the time to really meet in detail, and I hope that we do it soon. And I was asked today to do a summary of our European policies and funding mechanisms in 20 minutes, so I will try my best. I could start with the importance of science and research and frontier research, but we had a fantastic speech about this. So in Europe, we really have as a priority research and innovation, and science is a priority in our policy, and the European research area is one of the main instruments for our policy. Actually, is included in the treaty, so give us the possibility to have an European policy because it's in the European Treaty. And this European research area idea is very much based on principles, as it was also already mentioned, of academic freedom that is essential for our scientific activity and research, but also on ethical principles, ethics in science and in technologies, research integrity, and the global dimension, the openness of science. So we conceive science as open to the world. And I remember that during the previous Commissioner for Research and Innovation, Mr. Carlos Moedas, we used to say that the three O's: open science, open innovation, and open to the world. And it's something that is very much into the European scientific science and research policy. And with this, we have a very strong component of science diplomacy, of science solidarity, and one of the examples is what we are doing, and actually the European Parliament is pushing the Commission to do even more for the help of the researchers in Ukraine. And it's not the first time that we do that. Now we have ERC for Ukraine, we have ERA for Ukraine, we have Marie Curie for Ukraine, but we are pushing from the European Parliament side to have a more permanent mechanism that we find researchers where they are, and they are in risk not to be able to continue their activities. And for example, I remember many years ago during the Balkan War, that the fact that we have managed to bring a lot of researchers to US, but to the EU, to many universities. Our universities in Lisbon received many researchers from different parts of the Balkans that now are back and are full professors, are distinguished researchers, and that made easier for these countries now to build what they are, strong democratic countries. So that is the principles that our scientific and research policy are based. Also excellence. Excellence is our criteria. Is our criteria for any selection in any scientific funding. And even when we do the solidarity inside our funds, the solidarity is including in the way we design the scheme, not in the selection procedure. So as I will explain in things like we have in Horizon Europe, like the teaming and the twinning for countries that have lower participation in the framework program, it's the design that you are getting solidarity, you put together a country that is more developed in terms of technology and scientific advancement with one that is less. But after the criteria for choosing the selection of the proposals is excellent. So this is very important inside our policy. And we also look as an important priority in our career, the researchers' careers. Of course, here we share this responsibility with the member states, but it's very important, and we know that without researchers that feel well, that are well integrated, we do not have good conditions for science. And unfortunately, in many member states, we have phenomena of unemployment or very precarious employment. So it's something that is worrying at European level, and we have a policy to help as much as we can from the regional funds that they can use in order to help to get a more stable condition for our researchers in terms of employment, but in terms of working conditions to have the necessary infrastructures, and in terms of future pensions. And it's something that still we do not have a fully solution, that the researchers that move around in many European countries, that they can, in the end, to have access to a pension, taking in consideration all the time that they have spent in all the European countries. It's still not completely solved. It shows that in our internal market there is a lot to be done. So it's a task that we still need to work more. Recently, the European research area was completely with the European innovation area, because there is the recognition that we are on top when we developed frontier research. We have fantastic researchers, most or many of them with ERC grants, but we have difficulties when we want to transform this knowledge into the economy. And as it was said, for example, the vaccines, the development of the vaccines were a good example. The knowledge was developed here, but when we require to have the production, the scale-up, we request to be done in the US or the help of other countries. And so we have developed what we call the European innovation area with a set of policies that looks at the ecosystem of innovation. And it doesn't depend only on the policy makers on research and innovation. It depends on a lot of other conditions, from access to funding, labor laws, immigration laws. So a set of conditions that makes easy the knowledge to be transformed into value and to stay in Europe and not to go where it finds the conditions to be transformed in value. Very important, and together with the policy that is based in the European research area and now in the European innovation area, we have our framework programs. We are in a long history of different research programs. As a researcher, I've participated in many, and as a policy maker, I have started in the 7 framework program, actually as principal advisor of President Barroso, when 7 framework program has launched, and also the ERC was launched. I was his principal advisor. And also the partnerships were launched on that, and the EIT, as Rodrigo has mentioned. After in my first term in Parliament, I was a rapporteur of Horizon 2020 of the specific program, and there we have introduced these new concepts such as the widening, that we keep the excellence, but we do this teaming of more advanced institutions with institutions that come from less advanced in terms of science. We have included the synergy so that we can in certain way increase the budget. We allowed, that was something very difficult in the past, that we can put together different programs. For example, the framework program with funds from the regional funds or from foundations or other private funds. Now we have the Horizon Europe. In Horizon Europe, I have been rapporteur of the EIT. The EIT is an interest instrument because also have the higher education component, have research, higher education, and innovation. And one thing that I also would like to see in the future, that is a closer collaboration between ERC, EIT, and EIC. I haven't talked about EIC. EIC, I was also a lot involved in the origin of EIC because I was also a principal advisor of Commissioner Moedas when he put the pilot phase of the EIC. And the original idea of the EIC was to have a ERC devoted to innovation. But of course, it's more difficult to design a EIC than a ERC, because you want an excellent innovators, completely new ideas that create new markets, and is more difficult to evaluate such a proposal than a scientific excellent proposal, because there are metrics that we have been using for many, many years, and for innovation is not like this. And we have asked the service of the Commission to be adventurous, to face risk, because the EIC, to be successful, they need to fund projects that are risky. Otherwise, they will do incremental and not breakthrough new ideas to create new markets. And we know that structures like the European Commission are a lot of good things, but are not, they don't like to risk. And it's not a question not to like, they are bound also by financial regulations and other pieces of legislation that is difficult for them to have a risk attitude. So the EIC has been not, until now, not the success that we expect from the beginning, and is well known probably. Don't know if you follow the European policy close, but the European Parliament has been quite critical about the EIC in order that is not so ambitious that we would like to see. We would like to see as successful for innovation as the ERC has been for fundamental and frontier research. We are still pushing, we are still fighting for that. On Horizon Europe, we have now, is the biggest ever, is 100 billion euros. As the maximum budget doesn't mean that we achieve to that value, because it's something is that annual, every year we have to negotiate the budget, and the initial value is a limit. Doesn't mean that we arrive there. So if the member states in the negotiations do not want to give us the fair share for that year, we can end up being lower than the value that was firstly agreed. And I want to explain one thing. The big difficulties that we have in negotiating the budget for research is the Council. And it's very important that you know. You have Commission favorable to research, to frontier research, science and research. You have the Parliament always pushing for more budget in research and science. And in the negotiations in the Council, you have groups of countries. You have a group that defends agriculture, you have another group that defends regional funds, and you have a group that you could expect that defend research, but they defend a lower budget. So that's our problem. Countries that are the ones that receive more compared with their dimension for the European budget in Horizon Europe are the ones that do not step up to support us for budget for research. So we end up not to have a single country defending more budget for research. We had in the past many times Germany that would solve when we were in a way that we couldn't get out, German would say, that's it, and things would solve. Let's see now with the present government that if we have, I think that a lot was due to the fact that Chancellor Merkel was a researcher herself in the past. Let's see now. We hope that Germany continues to play that role, because countries like Netherlands, Denmark, Sweden, Finland, that you expect that come to help us, science is the second priority, but the first priority is to have a lower budget as much as they can. So that's the scene of the negotiations. They are called the frugals, and that's one of the problems that we have in the budget negotiations. The second risk that we have is that Horizon, because there is not a strong group of countries defending research, if there is an emergency that we require extra budget, where can the Commission get this extra budget? Cannot touch agriculture, cannot touch regional funds, because you have a group of countries completely defend. They try to go to Horizon. And there the typical thing is the Parliament defending. So now we are defending Horizon not to let some fundings go to the CHIPS Act for the microprocessors activity. We have in the past for the Juncker plan, we did a big fight to defend Horizon 2020, but was the Parliament. Because good thing is that the Parliament has a lot of power in the budget. You cannot agree on the budget without the yes of the Parliament. But it's the two risks that we have in the budget. So what are the novelties of Horizon Europe? We have a strong ERC, and we are very happy about the results of ERC, the results at Nobel Prizes, as we have seen recently, and a lot of fantastic research. We have also a strong emphasis on the public-private partnerships that is more applied research, but I was rapporteur of these partnerships, and I always want them to incorporate also frontier research and science, and to have the whole chain of research included. There are for example, 2 partnerships in the health sector, one of the innovative medicines, another on AIDS, malaria and tuberculosis, and they really need the fundamental knowledge, the fundamental research that is developed all over Europe, that is developed in ERC grants, that they incorporate that knowledge in order to to build upon this. So these partnerships are very important. There is the clean aviation, that was the previous Clean Sky, that they have the important task to develop the low emissions plane, electric or hydrogen. They need a lot of fundamental research in many areas, such as material, combustion, aerodynamics. So this is a part that is a strong part inside Horizon Europe, and sometimes the researchers that come more from academic world do not look so much to this one, and they should also look to these partnerships, because about a substantial percentage of Horizon Europe is devoted to the partnerships. To finalize, I would say that we need to be more visible. We need to be more visible on the results, because we also need to have the acceptance of the general public on the value of, because in the end they are paying the research with their taxes. And during the pandemic, most of our population saw the value of science, because the solution came from science in the development of vaccines. But we have so many examples that we are not enough visible. I will tell you an example on this AIDS, malaria, and tuberculosis. Was just recently authorized by WHO, the first malaria vaccine ever for children. And I didn't see any news about the link of this partnership, because this partnership already exists since I proposed this together with the Prime Minister of Mozambique in 2004 when I was minister. So it already exists. It's the third term that they have of 7 years. And I called them, are you involved in this? Yes, it's our work. They didn't do a public interview. Only after I said, but you have to come out with this. It's a fantastic. So we are very shy in Europe to communicate our science, and we need to communicate the good things in science, because also this helps the politicians when we have to negotiate the budget and to give more budget to science. So thank you very much again. Congratulations to all the researchers for the fantastic work that you are doing. We are doing excellent research in Europe, and we need to continue in spite of all the difficulties, in spite of all the other challenge that we have, and solicitations for putting the budget in other areas, because one of our worries will be security and defense. It can be a big competitor for the science budget, but we will defend in the European Parliament the importance of science. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much indeed. Pierre Bronstein, Chemistry. Thank you very much indeed for your talk and your plaidoyer for science. You mentioned that one of the key difficulties in the Council, what can we do to help? What can national academies do? What can European academies do to help? You identified one possibility is to be more visible. Okay, but beyond that, what could we do to help?
And I always say this in front of the academies, because you can do a lot to help. You are prestigious in your own member states, and it's very important that you talk with your prime ministers and your ministers of finance before we have the annual budget negotiation and the 7-year European budget negotiation, in order that they defend science. And as I have told, mainly these countries that I have mentioned, we need their support when we negotiate the budget, or where there is some risk of the budget of science to diminish because other competition with other areas. We need that in these negotiations. Countries that are so much scientific oriented help the parliament and supports. And so please talk with your finance minister. And usually is not unfortunately your science minister, because they will always help us. Is the finance ministers and the prime minister that are the problem.
I have a question directly addressed to you for the EIC. In fact, I noticed, maybe I'm wrong, you correct me if I'm wrong, but I noticed that in all the review panels, let's say the review panels are composed of scientists. Maybe I should not say that here, but for innovation, and you address the point a little bit, scientists are not necessarily the best place to judge all the aspects of innovation. They are good, of course, to judge on the excellence part of the proposal, but there is all the part which is related to the future business, which is associated to a given emerging technology. And if, for instance, I'm not sure that the scientists are the best place to make a clear evaluation of a business model of, let's say, the potential business that the technology is likely to address, the share of this market, the market share with competing technologies. And my question, in fact, is, do you consider, or maybe you have already, but I did not notice that, having at least one economist in the review panel to judge about this very important aspect for the innovation?
It's foreseen, but we have someone from the EIC. I don't know if you... I think that is what is happening.
Good morning. I'm Francesco from Matteucci from EIC. Yes, I mean, as EIC, we have got 3 funding schemes from very basic research that is called Pathfinder up to Transition Accelerator. So the remote evaluators and the jury panelists and also the evaluation process is different from the Pathfinder to the Transition to the Accelerator. To make it easy, at the Pathfinder level, that is just once again to cut, I mean, something that is not possible to cut. I don't like the TRL, okay? But everybody speaks like this, so we have to quote the TRL. And so Pathfinder goes from TRL 1 to TRL 3, so it ends at the proof of concept. And here, the remote evaluators, as well as the jury members, are more than 90% scientists, maybe 99%, okay? And then we, as program manager, we have to look at the business side, okay? Science and business side. When you increase, so go to the transition accelerator, let me say, obviously, the science presence decreases because the accelerator, in the end, what we fund are companies that want to scale up a business. Their technology has been already be proved, tested, and prototyped. So that's I mean, I may speak 1 hour, but just to make it in 1 minute.
Well, I would like to take the last point you mentioned, that we have to talk to our ministers, and we do that every occasion, and to the president or whoever. But I think it would be even very important to dedicate something like 1% or 0.5% of the budget to the media, to make movies, to make articles, to take to schools and say, look, science is for this, technology is for this. Everything that now likes to be known has to go to the media. I don't mean in internet and so on, television, press, but a continuous campaign bombarding the children, the young people, and even the old people. Because without that, there are so many things that appear in this media that research is always in a little corner. Yeah. So I would suggest you to dedicate some more money to that aspect.
I fully agree.
Can I say a word? What you said, Francisco, I agree. As a member of some European panel, I do see this presence of non-scientists, even in Pathfinder, for instance. There is a lot of non-scientists. EIC is more difficult than EIC interview. The jury might be a problem because you are asking for 2 weeks of full presence into your EIC panel. But if you tick to the category, there is not even scientist. It's, people involved in business and so on. So I agree that you have taken the right to non-scientists into your jury at EIC. But when you ask for 2 weeks full presence, sometimes it's difficult for people, for experienced people, to get out of their duty for 2 full weeks. So maybe you could have some kind of thinking on how to have more involvement of people from society by allowing them only 1 week, for instance, away from their activity. Because if you want people which are really active, which can be fruitful for your reflection, people cannot escape from 2 weeks, for 2 weeks from their duties.
Thank you very much. I will.
Hello?
I will move this to the management, the 2 weeks. Yeah, I'm aware. No, but concerning the Pathfinder, believe me, I do this job, 99% of the evaluators are scientists in the Pathfinder. What you are referring are for the accelerator. But I repeat, accelerator are small, medium enterprises, and we also have the opportunity. This is what Professor Carvalho was speaking about. The strong critics that are coming from European Parliament are mainly, as far as I know, I am not an expert of policymakers, I read it from the papers, are linked to the EIC fund. That is an option not to provide grant, but equity. Means that European Commission enters as stakeholders, as shareholders, inside the company. So that's a completely different way of evaluating. And in this case, the evaluators are mainly people coming from the economic point of view, from the business point of view, from the financial point of view.
Yes, thank you, Earth Sciences, John Porter. If you look back in the history of Swiss, the development of the Swiss industries, what happened in the Swiss industries was, to begin with, they had no policies at all about patenting. In fact, they said we didn't want patenting in Swiss industry when you had infant industries. And I have been in conversations with colleagues, with scientists who will say, I'm sorry, I can't talk about that because this may lead to a patent. So I just wonder whether we really think that, how can we also involve the norms of sciences which were enunciated by Robert Merton back in the 1930s, these kudos ways of thinking about science. And I also have been in a science council of INRA here in France, and there were many times when researchers were saying actually patents are getting in the way of us doing research. So I just wonder, is it time to rethink this relationship between research and patenting? I mean, how did that come into research? Is that a direction that we want to really move in? If we're thinking about, the president of the ESC was saying that, as Roma said, Ole Roma, the physics guy, that ideas should be free. The thing about science is that ideas are free. But ideas are really not free anymore, because ideas can lead to people taking patents out on those ideas. So I think there is a conflict here between the very noble ideas of free exchange of information between scientists, free discussion of information between scientists, and then at the end of it, you maybe have a patent which actually, in some ways you could argue, prevents further developments. I think it's something we need to think about.
I think both should answer, but first of all, just to introduce you, John is one of the founders of EPCC. They won the Google Prize of Humanities 2 years ago, which is, I think, so prestigious as a Nobel Prize. No, I just said that John is one of the founders of EPCC. It is one of the great prizes that started in 2020 in Portugal, the Gulbenkian Prize Award for Humanity, which is so relevant. So you are looking more for the humanities aspects, which I think we have to look for.
Thank you.
Professor.
I'm really not an expert on patents, and I deplore any secrecy in publicly funded research as well. I'm from the life sciences and the pharmaceutical industry, who will take the patents and develop them. I've always been told by them patents are needed to allow them to actually invest, because
That wasn't the case to begin with.
like I say,
It's not the case to begin with in Switzerland. It's often La Roche,
yeah,
they were totally against patents.
yeah. Well, that's where I had my initial training, actually. So, I
mean,
agree with you. I don't know why it's become that, but it needs it.
because they were infant industries. They wanted to have free exchange of information. And it's only when they became large industries they said, we've got to protect that information.
Also depends on the sector and the degree of development. For example, in areas like the example that I gave, aeronautics, the patents is the patents and the trade secrets that is include the company, because there is a lot of competition between Airbus and the different competitors in the US, in Asia, or in Brazil. So they have, at a certain stage, at a certain development to protect. But until that, all the more fundamental research is shared and is global. So it's only at the last bit of the development of the technology that is in certain way protected. But also depends on the sector that we are, in the industrial sector that we are looking at.
I just wanted to make a comment from Dr. Lipkin's talk. We do tend to be shy in making our case, and we are reticent for reasons which are difficult to understand. Now, one thing which is very important is to communicate what I would call paradigm-shifting technologies, which actually alter the way we live and lead to creation of enormous amounts of wealth. They don't happen very often, but they do happen, and they're always underpinned by basic fundamental research. So I give you a couple of anecdotes. One was with a Chancellor of the Exchequer in England in the 1850s, Gladstone, you might know him. So Faraday showed him how electricity works. And so Gladstone asked him, what good is this going to be? And he said, it will be something you will be taxing soon. So that was his answer. Of course, since he was a finance minister, that was appropriate. It clearly, obviously, altered much of our development. There are a few other examples which are related to one example which I think you alluded to, this interplay between industry, society, and basic science. And that comes from Dirac's equation, which is an esoteric equation, but it predicted the existence of the anti-electron. And so that took a long time, about 70 years, to get to the point where you can get PET images which start becoming competitive in cost with X-rays. But it took a lot of effort with the society agreeing to fund if you get a PET image, the health insurance would fund it, and then led to industries which created these cameras, and work that we do which brings the cost down per unit of a photograph. That's part of the work that I think people like us do, is to make sure that the costs to society come down as well, on a radical idea which is completely based on basic science. You would not, Dirac I don't think would ever have figured out that we would get a PET image as such. And the last one, which is alluding to your comment, I think the World Wide Web really took off because it was just given. It was not patented, And if CERN had just put one strong team... Sorry?
Monoclonal antibody.
Yes, exactly. So there are examples where things actually develop much faster if the constraint of a patent is not imposed. It's easy for organizations like CERN because they're publicly funded, and so to have things open. But I think there was a product at the time which was commercial, Netscape I think it was, which could have actually blocked that development. And now it's $1 trillion business that is underpinned by the World Wide Web. So that is a paradigm shift in technology. We don't do things like we did before the web was invented, whether we want to do commerce or whether we want to look for knowledge or whatever. So everything is based on that. So that's what I meant by paradigm shifting technologies. And I think there are many examples, and if we actually put across those, they're much easier for the public to understand because they see the effects of it. And also we can explain that it takes a long time, and it requires this interplay between society, industry, and basic science. But you can't do it with just one of the three arms alone. But it starts with the basic science, fundamental science.
I couldn't agree more. Obviously, there are wonderful examples. I didn't know these. There are many others, radio and, you know, yeah. 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 Penicillin. I mean, there are hundreds of examples, and I'm the last to be defending patents. I can't judge. I just pass on what I was told when I deplored patents. And I'm no expert. I don't know why it's changed, whether it can change back. But those examples are wonderful. The latest example, of course, that everybody is prepared to accept is the COVID vaccine. And that's really brought this home, you know, very acutely to everyone. Oh, absolutely, absolutely. Which, by the way, was not breakthrough. It was not, it was piffling, tiny little, what we would now insult as incremental research, which I believe is extremely important. Without the incremental research, you have nothing to build on to make the big, unexpected, and unpredictable breakthroughs.
I'm waiting to...
Sorry.
Yeah, okay.
Okay, I'm Ernfried Czech. I'm a CTO of a deep tech company in Dresden with the name DeepXGen, and therefore maybe it's obvious that I appreciate your efforts for the AIC and that you also have the power to continue it. But it's more general because we founded our company because we wanted that high-risk technology will stay in Europe and not goes to Asia again. So, and I have a particular question to you. If I look on the project that are funded by AIC on the web page, then it's not evenly distributed in Europe. Does it mean that from some countries much more applications show up, or does it mean that some countries are very, very successful, maybe by the support of the national offices? What's, from your point of view, the reason for this?
I will leave Francesco to speak about EIC later.
No, just to say in a short time that ecosystem of innovation, so the ecosystemic approach, that is the theory inside innovation management, is long to describe, but just to make it easy, the most efficient ecosystem that has ever been set up has been the Israeli one, and to make it successful, it took 20 years, 2-0. So it's really difficult to say that something is working or not working in 3 to 5 to 10 years, because Israel, with its social structure, has been able to set up nowadays, if you invest in high-risk research money, the most successful one is Israeli ecosystem, but it took 20 years, 2 years, so it's a very long process.
Thank you for this very nice overview of your work at the EU Parliament. What I was missing in your statement is the role of data in general. And I think this is extremely underestimated. And I know why, because it is a matter of each discipline to handle data. But the question is, and this is also concerning about financiation of science in the future, we need to be more forced in making new coalitions, new alliances with industrial field. The best example is Google. Basically, Google owns everything. I make that bold statement. And there are a few disciplines which cannot be handled by Google, for example, chemistry. They're extremely interested in to get in this because of predictions and all this kind of thing. So my question is, why isn't the EU using that kind of innovation to force new experiments, to ask the disciplines how you're going to change to deal with your data? And it has to do with the way of publication, or you publish the work, the role of journals in this. It is all paid by the taxpayers. So when you look at this, where all this ends up, where who is basically making money out of it, and you can tax it, yes. But this is a very unclear area where most academian friends are hesitating to make coalitions with industrial partners, and I know this from academy in Germany. We have this severe discussion. So my question is, what is the role of data, open data, and use this as a task force to change or paradigm change to deal with data in general? Because this is where the money comes from. And you would be able to finance science and more, well, as we all know, every day is a new scientist coming into the community, and the budget is limited. So the question is there any economic idea how we overcome these limits by, collaborating with industry partners, let's say Google?
Yeah, one of probably the reasons that I didn't mention data is because I'm the rapporteur of data, and I have data until, because I have to deliver my report on the 9th of November, so I'm working on data from 12 hours a day. So it's a report, it's called Data Act. I'm the rapporteur in the INCO committee, the EPP rapporteur in the INCO, that's the internal market committee. And there is a colleague of mine, Mrs. Pilar del Castillo, a Spanish MEP, that is a full rapporteur in the ITRE, in the industry committee. And that report is probably one of the most complex reports. And I explain you why, because the Commission put a horizontal report that covers all the relations on data, from the automotive industry to the appliances, to the aeronautics, to the health, to research. So all to whom belongs the data, in which conditions you need, you are required to share the data, which conditions you can keep your data or not, or you have to open up the data. And the flow of data outside the EU, so to whom it belongs, the role of the platforms, and you have there a very sensitive equilibrium by the big ones that are US and the smaller that are mainly Europeans. And the difficulties that there's in the switch, for example, in cloud switching, and how we put more the rules of competition in all that. So you see there is many difficult questions, the economic value of data. So is a report that will be delivered on the 9th of November. We will be voted in January, probably in plenary in February, negotiated during the next presidency, so that will be out in the spring, before summer. But it's very complex. Each of these topics is, and the question of research is a very important one, very important, because one of my worries is that we do not put any barrier, extra barrier to the research, because it can happen in these reports, especially if they are very horizontal reports, that you generalize rules, and if you look at it with the lens of a researcher, sometimes you find things that can make life of the researcher more complex. So we need also to evaluate that. Access to databases, because there is a very, and we understand the tendency from the proposal of the Commission to be very protective of the data privacy. But we need to look also with the eyes of the researcher to the availability of data.
Just very briefly to clarify, and you probably know this, but in case it wasn't clear, Horizon Europe mandates open deposition, all data, and open access publishing.
Yeah.
So it's
It's not enough, because this is depending on the disciplines. You can basically encourage change by saying, for example, the quality of the data, which are produced, let's say, in chemistry, in synthesis, they are 80% useless. I tell you why. Because it is not strongly defined the way these recipes for this kind of data are produced, so to say.
right. Well, that's partly up to the journals. Again, I can only speak from mine. If you publish in good journals, they curate or they make sure that the data are properly curated and properly deposited. Exploitative and predator journals, of course, don't. They want your money, not
that's right.
science. So you have to go to good journals that have a good refereeing process and that have good editorial offices that do that. But from the side of the European Commission, it's a mandate.
Yeah, I know, which is good.
Let's hear Paul. Paul, that is online. He could not make it. Can we hear you, Paul?
Yes.
Okay.
Do you hear me?
Yes, yes.
Okay, so I apologize for not being able to be with you physically. And so I would like to comment on Maria Lepkin's talk, actually, and to thank her for the great talk. And just to give example of the interest of frontier research, I would like to mention that recently the European Academy of Science, together with the Chinese Academy of Science, organized a Frontier Forum on the progress in marine science and technologies. And so the themes of this forum was the need for big data management, okay, especially through artificial intelligence, and also the development of what we call numerical twins of the ocean, digital twins of the ocean, and the global coastal ocean research. And in any of these cases, actually, there is a good link between the need for frontier research. For instance, you are not able to build digital twins of the oceans if you are not excellent in physical oceanography or in chemical oceanography and biological oceanography. And when you are, actually, you know very well the processes, and then you can build digital twins of the oceans that are of major interest for policymakers, for instance. So there is a real need of frontier research, and I really appreciate the ERC involvement to support the frontier research. Thank you very much.
It's a fun of you. So, yes.
Yeah. I don't know if I understood everything because the sound is a bit difficult, but first, I don't see the problem with the intellectual property that was raised. I mean, in our field in biology, you can publish as soon as you have filed the patent, which means you don't lose time. Patents are filed and the paper follows right thereafter. And we have seen in the field of RNA vaccines or RNA technology that pure frontier science, or CRISPR-Cas9, was patented and led to top-level publication and sharing of the knowledge. This is my first point. My second point is that I agree that it's mandatory, Maria, that in all ERC and FET-Open and Pathfinder project, FAIR is mandatory, FAIR data, which means findable, accessible, interoperable, and reusable. So everybody says, okay, our data will be fair in their application, and then once the program is granted, what is the mechanism that grants that the data will indeed be findable, reusable, and interoperable? Is there any mechanism that has been put in place to verify this compliance to the FAIR principle?
Yes, so for the ERC, the scientific officers actually check this in the midterm report and in the final report. So it's actually checked. Now, an officer, a scientific officer sitting in an office in Brussels cannot figure out whether an experiment is repeatable. But, you know, I'm sure you've moved from your lab from one part of the building to another, and we can't repeat our own experiments. So it's a little bit difficult to say what the yardstick there is. But whether it's actually deposited in respected databases, that's checked. And, you know, to what depth, I don't know. But, you know, often these, it's more than good citizenship. It's essential for science that data are accessible. In the end, we have to rely on the damage that researchers do themselves if they deposit bad data. You know, reputation is a very, very high currency in research, as we all know, and so there has to be some trust. And probably if there is a mechanism by which every experiment is repeated, that's a waste of time because some experiments aren't worth repeating. But and the others will be picked up and tested by others.
I do agree.
It's a mixture of control and trust.
Yeah, I suppose reproducible means giving all the methodological data to be able to reproduce the experiment. But I mean, there was a comment on the fact that there is a competition between different initiatives, and the rare disease initiative was presented, and they are very strong on this aspect of fair data, because there is a need to share data, because the rare disease population is spread all over Europe. Sometimes you have 5 to 10 patients in each country, so you need to put in common all this natural history or clinical data or whatsoever of this patient all over Europe, and you need interoperable data in this particular field. So they have a real experience and know-how. I personally belong to the UGPRD, Rare Disease European Joint Program, and now we are working on the Rare Disease Partnership. And there is a real big part of the budget which is dedicated to this, and they have the experience to handle this kind of fair interoperability question.
Actually, they also need to put in data management. So data management plans have also become mandatory. They don't have to do it before application, but as soon as the project is approved, you have to have a data management plan. And that, of course, goes some way towards checking whether you're going to be doing it. You're at least thinking about it. So I think it's a gradual process.
Well, yeah.
I would now ask Francisco, because we have been speaking about the two borders, and I would like if you could just try to tell us what is this new concept of EIC. And just to tell you, we can trust the Scientific Council. The Scientific Council, when you say they try to trust, and they try, of course, they have to trust and have the ethical procedures, but most of the cases, I think, are well filtered. This is my experience.
Good morning to everybody. Thank you, Rodrigo and Eurasc Academy, to give me the opportunity to try to say something about the European Innovation Council. And I would first say that it's I like to call it a startup because officially European Innovation Council started 1st April 2021. There were 3 years of pilot, but officially the agency was put in place. And we manage quite a relevant budget for a huge area because I fully agree with what Professor Letin said before concerning the importance of incremental research and incremental innovation, but what EIC is mainly devoted to fund, it's what is not incremental, so what is normally called the breakthrough innovation, and what is normally called the deep technologies, where the deep technology are the science-based innovations. So based on these two requirements, when you are an applicant to the EIC, then it goes to the second part, that is the fact that as an agency, we are entitled to make the funding to the whole, what we call innovation journey. So from the idea up almost to the market uptake. So the EIC has got, as I said before, 3 funding schemes, and each funding scheme more or less tries to bridge one of the, I don't like once again to repeat, but what normally is called the valley of death of innovation. So the first funding scheme, that is the Pathfinder, funds up to the proof of principle or proof of concept. So where normally, let me say, the lab research stops in a traditional public research center or academy. Okay? We all know that in the last 30, 40 years, there has been a huge change in the money spent from private organizations to fund low, frontier research, low in terms of basic research. If we go back to look where the photovoltaic cells, the first silicon solar cells, or many other experiments in electronics or beginning on the photovoltaic, they were set up in Bell Labs, and Bell Labs were private labs, okay? Now if we go over the years, we arrive more or less at the 90s, where we see that the big corporates started to decrease the amount of money given to its pure, let me call like this, pure or basic research labs. And this money normally now is no more spent by corporates. As far as I know, it's 22 years I'm working in innovation, having worked as a researcher, as a corporate R&D manager, as a startupper. And I have never faced huge corporates nowadays investing in my field, that is advanced materials for energy, in the field of basic research. So nowadays, mainly, as far as I know, the basic research in, once again, deep technologies is mainly made in public research lab. So it is much more than important what the speakers before said about the importance of giving the freedom to the researcher to operate, and the more money we will give them, and the more research result we will see also in the impact on the society, okay? But that's a part of, let me say, research. If we want to make a difference between research and innovation, it's not easy, because, innovation, it exists thousands of definitions. I like to say that, Commissioner Möders tried to say normally that innovation is something that is new and useful, okay? We can see that the innovation journey is something that brings an idea to its market exploitation. But whatever it is, normally innovation deals with the exploitation of research results. And that is where the EIC tries to have, let me say, its brand, okay? And there is a lot to be done in terms of EIC, because as I said before, it's new. But the first step is this Pathfinder. Then, and Pathfinder is open to partnership. And if we look at the numbers, they are not so different in terms of the open application to Pathfinder, to what President Leptin said before concerning EIC. If we look at the numbers of the Pathfinder open projects funded by EIC, we see that between digital, health, and green, we fund more or less more than the 70% of the overall projects, okay? And then there are the other step, that is the transition. And a transition is a type of fund that brings a previously developed idea coming out of an ERC proof of concept or a Pathfinder, that's the eligibility criteria, and takes this idea from its proof of principle and try to bridge with the money, bringing it to the prototype. So the TRL6, that means tested in relevant environmental conditions. With one exception, that as a transition, at the end of the transition, you have to reach the prototype, but you have to tell
to us, which is your exploitation strategy. Nobody wants a scientist to become an entrepreneur, but we want a scientist or an entrepreneur to say how he wants to exploit the research result. It exists many ways. He can license its know-how, he can sell its know-how, he can set up small, medium enterprises, but at the end of the transition, we want an exploitation strategy if the research results have been successful. And once again, transition is open with this eligibility criteria to partnership. Then we go to the accelerator. The accelerator is the only mono-beneficiary funding scheme, and we fund small, medium enterprises, EU, with the main activities done in EU, once again, to go from the prototype up to the market. And so it's normally said that the accelerator wants the scale-up to happen. And there are two other characteristics inside EIC. The first one is that we provide two types of funding. In Pathfinder and Transition, we give grants, only grants. In Accelerator, we provide grant, equity, or merged funding. So merged funding is that first you start with the grant, and then you can get the equity. Equity, you directly go to the equity. Because EIC is actually managing the first ever European Commission Venture Capitalist Fund. Okay? And the second characteristic, that maybe it's also why I am here, why I like a lot this job of program manager, is the fact that EIC works content-wise. There are no scientific officers in EIC, but there are program managers and business acceleration services. What does it mean? That EIC, when we implement the projects, to come back to what you were saying before, we do not only monitor the projects in terms of results, but we try to work with the projects, grouping them in portfolios that are a group of projects with common themes and or similar applications, and we want the project to work together to bring their innovation to, as much as possible, a higher level of TRL. This means that we work with the projects. What we like to say is that EIC, it's not a grant-giving agency, but it's a hands-on agency. That means that we put the hands on the projects. As a program manager, we have got two responsibilities. The first one, that is also, let me say, something that I personally agree as a concept, is that the EIC budget is not fully devoted to open ideas, so to non-topic prescripted ideas. So there is a budget for open applications, so no topic prescription, that is nowadays, it's more or less 60%, but the 40% is challenge-based. And it's the responsibility of the program manager to speak with relevant scientists, as all of you are, worldwide, to identify the challenges for the Pathfinder, to study, to discuss, to implement it, and to propose it first to the program committee and then to the inter-service group inside the European Commission. And this goes to the definition of the Pathfinder challenges. So if you look at our yearly work program, you will find open calls, but also challenge calls. And the challenge or targeted approach, it means, just to make clear example, this year, a few days ago, it closed the challenges on green technologies that my colleague, Professor Pantaleo, and me developed, and one will be on CO2 and nitrogen management and valorization, and the other one on mid-long-term energy storage. And behind this, let me say, risk of getting challenges, there has been 7 months of discussion with scientists, with entrepreneurs, with innovation managers, with VCs, to identify the challenges of Pathfinder. The same stuff goes to the transition and to the accelerator. So in each of the funding scheme, EIC decides challenges, discusses with the scientists, with the innovators, and with obviously within the European Commission and with the member states. And then, so you will see that our work program has got this characteristic of having open and challenge-based goals. The second part is the hands-on approach. So we work with the projects in two ways. One is an outsourced help to the project that is called business acceleration services. So each project has got a certain amount of money provided by the EIC to say, do you want mentors? Do you want connections, for example, with stakeholders? Do you want connections with venture capitalists? And we organize this kind of business acceleration events. And then has got an in-house know-how, that is the program manager unit, with experts in selected areas that can stay normally in between 4 years inside the agencies that are are program managers, that has got the double responsibility to identify the challenges and to work with the project, trying to set up also this portfolio approach. And this portfolio approach is one of the novelties of the EIC. Because, I mean, you all know that EIC mainly has got many commonalities with US agencies, such as DARPA or ARPA-E, many commonalities, but has got also some novelties. And one of the novelties is this portfolio approach. So to work grouping the projects and trying to exploit as much as possible this open innovation, collaboration, or open science between the different projects. Last but not least, I would say that what is for sure needed is to increase the mentality of the, let me say, scientific entrepreneurship. Thanks to Professor Rodrigo Martins and to Jeanne Tourneau, we proposed, and we will see, but it may be approved in a few weeks, so I cannot disclose it, but you will see that inside the European Innovation Council 2023 work program, there will be a call exactly aimed at increasing the scientific entrepreneurship mentality of the PhD and post-PhD students. This is an agreement between ERC, Marie Curie, and EIC, just to set up and to give the possibilities to the PhD or post-PhD students to set up their know-how, their career path, not only as researcher or scientist, but to understand and to test if they are the right person to make the innovation managers or the entrepreneurs. And the only way to test this one, at least this has been my experience that I discussed a lot with Jeanne Tourneau and Rodrigo Martins, is to bring the students or the PhD or the post-PhD inside the companies to do the innovation job. So what has been many experiences in my life with many colleagues has been that at a certain point of your life, if you don't go inside a real, let me say, business-oriented opportunity, so inside the company, it's difficult to understand if your mentality is more science-prone or more business-prone. So nevertheless, it's totally in the hands of the EIT, the training part of entrepreneurs. As EIC, together with Marie Curie and ERC, the mentality is not to train, but to give the opportunity to say and to test if the students are prone to increase the number of innovation managers. Because I don't need to repeat to you, because you represent the highest level of the scientists in Europe, that in terms of scientists, Europe is very, very good, very, very high talented. But when we go on the other side, let me say, of this valley, that is how to exploit research results for many, many reasons that I don't want to bore you. There are many papers on this, and I work on this since many years. We see that Europeans, we are for sure no more the best one in exploiting in terms of research, in exploitation, sorry, in terms of research result. And so also this small, part of the new work program wants exactly try to bridge and to help increasing the community. Because to come back also of the discussion before on patents, it's not easy to say if it is good to patent or not good to patent. Because just to give a stupid example, when you patent something, if it is not good, it's not a question of a responsibility or your reputation. It's that you are patenting and giving money to something that is not working. So you are wasting money, because a patent is valid as long as it works. If it doesn't work, it's not a problem. You pay, but you get nothing back. So it's not easy to find the solution for the best way to exploit research results. But the ambition of EIC is exactly to do this. I don't know if I...
I think somehow it happens, and we have to thanks to the speakers, especially Professor Maria Leptin, Graça Carvalho, and Francisco, for giving some animation to this discussion and make us think different. I just would like to say we have to change our mindset. You spoke about a joke. I will give you a joke. When I also was a student, and it was in the 70s, so it was Sir Neville Moore from Cambridge used to say that as far as science and technology is coming, Mott was really a fantastic scientist, and used to say the Japanese, at that time was Japanese, maybe now it should be the Chinese. The Japanese, they are hard workers. They put a lot of effort to get results. The Americans, they put the money. It doesn't matter. So they put the money to get the results. The Europeans spend all the time to say to who belongs the idea. I think that we are more or less like that. And this is where we have to go. We have to go together. I think if you want to go, we have to support all of us and try to see how we can really manage to get not a better comfort for us, but a global better comfort to all, that we can exchange ideas and we can be the driver force. Don't wait. And also, there are a phrase from John Weiser, don't wait what state can do for you, but what you can do for the state. This is what we have to do when Graça said, go and try to make positive lobby in your countries with the guys that decided what are the challenges that you have to do. And the academy, of course, wants to be on this front. In Europe, we have this scientific advisor mechanism where the academy is supporting, but has to change because after 5-10 years, we need to change and to see what could be the new pathways that we have to go far. But I used to say that, in my opinion, the best scientific council in the world is the one that Maria Lepkin is the president. And we have to follow the good examples. Just this morning, Ferrari told me that, in fact, graphene was invented 30 years before, 83, this is what he said, by an Italian, but he never assumed that it was graphene that he was producing. And there are a paper in 83 about that. So I rely on what Andreas told me. But this is life. This means that you can make the best, but if you don't know for where or for what, it doesn't matter. The add value is zero. This is life. So who gets the opportunity and see where are the opportunities to use is the ones that we have to follow. And this is where we are here. So now let's go for the cocktail. And thank you very much to all of you, and see you around the cocktail and make the best for us. Because if you make the best for your countries, you make the best for Europe. Thank you very much.